What camera should you buy? This was a question I was asked the most in what was a pretty overwhelming response to a video I made last year about why you shouldn't buy and spend your money on the latest camera gear. And I've not really addressed any of these questions. The awkward truth is this: I don't know what camera you should buy. But before you click off and try and find a video answering that question directly, just hear this. Everyone is individual. Everyone's needs are individual. So someone creating a video like this cannot answer the question of what camera you need. What I can do and what I will do in this video though is explain the criteria that I apply to my purchasing decisions when I'm looking to buy a new camera. I'll also explain a bit later exactly which camera I would buy based on my experiences as a filmmaker and photographer. The first thing you need to look at is your current gear and what limitations you face with the gear you're currently using. You need to take a real honest look at the camera or cameras you've got at the moment and work out where they aren't working for you. Cameras have come on a lot in the last few years, but that's not necessarily a reason to jump on board with one of these new systems. Take the camera you've got now and look at its limitations and really kind of study if those limitations are impacting and affecting your photography. Maybe you're someone that goes outside a lot in lots of different weather types, but you've not got a camera at the moment that is weather sealed. That is a really big limitation. Maybe you're someone that shoots a lot in low light, but you've not got a camera that handles low light. Well, that's a limitation. Maybe you're someone that photographs birds on a really long lens and your autofocus isn't up to scratch. That's another limitation. These are the real limitations that can hamper us in our photographic journey. I don't think things like megapixels are necessarily a limitation, because as many videos out there have proved already, 20 megapixels is generally enough for most people in this day and age. So be honest about your current camera system, whether or not it's limiting you, and whether a new camera system would counter those limitations. The second thing I would speak about is changing brands and brand affiliation, and I know a lot of people have garnered a lot of views from changing camera brands on YouTube. If you are considering changing brands, ask yourself why that is. Not one of them stands out more than any other in my opinion, not to the degree that it should influence your purchasing decision. When you're tied to a brand as well, you've often got a lot of money tied up in that brand, in the collection of lenses that you've bought for that camera. And when you come to sell those lenses, if you were to change to a different brand, you're going to lose a lot of money selling those lenses to buy all new ones again. And it really just isn't worth the switch. So if switching brands is something you're currently considering, really try and think about if that's worthwhile in the long term. And I think in the majority of situations, it just isn't. I actually managed to counter this advice completely later on in the video. You'll see. Point number 3 is thinking about your real needs as a photographer or a filmmaker. I think a lot of people can get tied up in new gear will make us better, and we need to try and take that kind of emotional opinion out of this conversation about whether or not you should upgrade your camera gear. I think it ties very closely to the first point I made in what the limitations are with the gear you currently have. Look at what your needs are as a photographer. Do you need something that's weather sealed? Do you need something that is really good at high ISO? Do you need something with animal auto focus detect? I think a lot of people end up buying cameras with a lot of features that they do not need. I will take my camera for example. I bought the Sony a7R5 earlier this year, and a lot of the features in this camera I'm just never going to use. I don't need pixel shift to get a bigger image. I don't need 60 odd megapixels or whatever it is. I can't even remember. I don't need the autofocusing capabilities that it has. So why did I buy it? Well, I bought it because I needed a camera that did video and it did stills very well. And the video capabilities in this matched my A7S III. I do this professionally, I make videos professionally, and I needed 2 cameras that matched each other. So really look at these camera systems and think, are these features anything I'm ever going to use? You might think one day you may use it, but in all likelihood you probably won't. If you're a landscape shooter, you don't need the autofocus capabilities that the newer cameras have, because, well, you can pretty much focus manually most of the time if you're a landscape photographer. You just don't need those autofocus capabilities. Before I waffle anymore, just really look at the camera capabilities and study whether or not they are something that you actually need, or maybe they're just a nice extra to have that it's just not worth paying that extra money for. The fourth thing to consider is your budget, and this is a really simple one. You probably shouldn't spend more money than you can afford to. I've seen lots of stories about people going into debt to buy the latest and greatest camera gear, and it's just not worth it, especially if you're a hobbyist. If you're a pro, maybe you could say, well, this camera's going to pay for itself later down the line. And if you can realistically justify that it is going to pay for itself, that those extra features will pay for themselves, then fine. Invest in that camera if you think it is the right thing for you. But as a hobbyist, you have absolutely no need to break the bank to get the latest and the greatest cameras. The video I did, which is linked up here, has got so many comments under it of people saying that they are using 5, 10, 15, even 20-year-old cameras, and they are absolutely perfect for their needs. So really do consider your budget and just don't go over it, because it's not worth it. Going on from that into point number 5 is, should you spend your money elsewhere? I think one of the easiest things to look at upgrading in photography and filmmaking is the camera body, but are your lenses up to scratch? Have you got the best quality lenses for those cameras? Because if you've not, then that's probably an area you should look at upgrading before you upgrade the camera, because the image quality and the sharpness of the better lenses are really going to make a difference to what it is that you're creating, more so than the camera in a lot of cases. Also, should you even invest in lenses at the moment? What standard is your photography up to? Be super critical about this and work out, well, maybe a workshop or a course or something like that is a more worthwhile investment at this time than a new camera or new lenses. Or maybe you should invest in going away somewhere on a trip to somewhere like Iceland or the Alps, or somewhere where you can immerse yourself in photography for a week or 2 weeks and probably learn more and improve your photography more from doing that than you would improve it by buying new gear. And my 6th point is technical limitations, your technical limitations. And I touched on this earlier. Are you just looking to purchase a new camera to kind of make up for any technical shortfall that you might have in your photography and filmmaking? And this is a very difficult one to get a grasp on, because considering ourselves to be not as good as we want to be is quite a difficult thought process to have. It's quite difficult to sit with those thoughts and feel the discomfort of them, but they are there. They are there with me. There are so many photos I see out there, and I think, I wish I'd taken that. I wish I was as good as that. And the easy route out of that is to aim for the best quality gear that these other pros are using. I get that. I've been there, but it just doesn't work. We've got to have those difficult conversations with us and just be honest with ourselves, like I say, and just say, okay, my photography needs improving before I buy new gear. The gear isn't going to make me any better. And that kind of brings me on to the aspect of all these new features in new cameras, the AI autofocus and everything I talked about in my last video. Are they necessary? Because I think part of the fun of photography is the challenge of it. If I'm nailing the shot every single time, I'm not making mistakes, so I'm not learning from those mistakes, and the challenge isn't quite there. I need to be challenged in what I'm doing. That's how I get enjoyment from it. That's part of the journey for me. And to me, removing a lot of those challenges and sort of removes the fun of photography. And I just feel like if it is too easy in that respect, I'm not saying it's easy at all, but if it is, it could just get a bit more boring. So I think people learn better from having more restrictive gear. In short, what I'm saying is we learn from our mistakes, and it's harder to make mistakes with the newest gear. I mean, it is still pretty easy to make mistakes. I make enough of them myself. Okay, the 7th point is, should you get a camera now or should you wait for a new release? There are always new releases on the horizon when it comes to cameras. Every single manufacturer out there will be bringing out a selection of new cameras this year with new features and new capabilities. And in truth, none of these new features and capabilities are going to matter to the majority of people that watch this video. It's just not important to the hobbyist, the amateur, and potentially most professionals as well. But the thing that new releases do is they drive down the prices of all the cameras that have come in the year before. So if you can hold on, it might be worth waiting to buy your new camera until a new release comes out, because you'd probably be able to get either a new older camera cheaper, because they often put them on offer, or you'll be able to get a used camera cheaper as well. And that brings me on to the next point, which is point number 8, and that is, should you buy new or should you buy used? Now, I'm someone that has generally always bought new gear, and that's just my preference. I like to know something's history. I don't know who has had it before. If it's used, I don't know how they've treated it. But I have bought a couple of used lenses recently, and I have been really impressed. And I think with expensive photography gear, you are more likely to pick up something used that has been looked after. Photographers and filmmakers generally do look after their stuff pretty well. So I don't think you should necessarily be scared of buying used, because you can get some absolute bargains on eBay, for example, or MPB or Wexused or something like that. You do pay a bit of a premium if you buy from a company like that, but you do get more peace of mind. So I think used is a really good option if you are looking to get another camera. I know that with used cameras, the shutter counts can put people off, but you can normally access these, and there are some cameras out there with scarily low shutter counts that are available for really bargain prices if you're willing to just spend a bit of time looking around. Now, I said earlier that later in the video I'd explain what camera I would buy if I was buying one right now, and I have mentioned this before on this channel, and I would probably buy a Fujifilm X-T4. Now, I have owned an X-T2 in the past, and to this day, it is my favorite camera I've ever owned. I just absolutely loved using that camera. And when you love using a camera, that transitions into your work, and you're just going to make better work if you really enjoy the thing that you're using. That to me is probably the only reason to change brands. I know I'm being completely hypocritical based on what I said earlier about not changing brands, but if you've got a camera system and you don't enjoy using it, it's kind of like a sunk cost fallacy. There's no point in you continuing to use that system if it is not going to progress your photography. I think that's probably one of the only times I'd change brands, is because I know there's a system out there that I prefer using and therefore will use more. If you can get your hands on a potential new camera before you actually buy it so that you can test it out and see how it feels, ergonomics are massive, then I would recommend doing that. But anyway, yeah, I'd buy a Fuji X-T4. And why an X-T4 over an X-T3? And the simple explanation is that it has got IBIS in it. Now, to a lot of people, IBIS in body image stabilization isn't really necessary, but I shoot quite a lot handheld in lower light conditions. So to me, it would be really helpful. This shot, for example, I'm going to pull up now. This was shot handheld, and it's amazing what these IBIS systems can do now. Anyway, I hope all of that has been useful. I'd love to be able to recommend specific cameras to people, but I don't know your specific use cases. Only you can make that decision, and I hope that the things I've said have helped in some way you to reach a decision in that. I don't think you can go wrong with the majority of cameras made over certainly the last few years from all the main manufacturers, because they are all at the absolute top of their game. Do your research, apply the criteria I've listed out, and more importantly, don't overthink it. Get yourself a camera that you enjoy using and just go out and shoot more. If you'd like to hear more about this kind of stuff, I do have a Creative Club newsletter linked in the bottom that approaches things not just from a using your camera point of view, it's more about the wider approach to photography, because using a camera isn't the only thing that goes into it. It's everything that goes on in here and in your wider life as well. You need to kind of approach a lot of different things if you're going to improve in photography, not just your technical capabilities. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you've liked this video, you might want to check out my camera creativity A to Z videos too.